So, I've been using the Sony XM4 earbuds for a while now, and while I've been thoroughly impressed by it, I have to admit that I have been using all its features rather selectively. Well, the other day I thought to myself, what happens if someone completely commits to a device? I mean, use the device pretty much as the engineers or designers might have intended for it to be used. So I did. I committed to using the XM4 earbuds for 10 straight days, about 8 to 10 hours a day, with almost every smart feature activated almost all the time. And this is what I found out. Okay, in my original review of the Sony XM4 earbuds, I did mention that the shape of the earbuds combined with the strength of the magnets that hold them in the case make them rather difficult to take out. Now, this still holds true. It didn't really get any easier, but I will say that there were some circumstances where I was glad to have the stronger magnets rather than the weaker ones. Now, what did get easier was actually using the earbuds. Over time, my ears did get accustomed to having these in my ear, and they did get significantly more comfortable than when I first put them in. Having said that, there are some things to talk about. Now, Sony provides you with something they call hybrid foam tips. Normally with foam tips, you're expected to pinch the tips, then insert them into your ear and wait for them to expand to their original size, thus providing a nice seal in your ear. I found with Sony's hybrid tips, they tend to expand back to their original size far too quickly for this. Instead, I found it easier just to place the earbuds in my ear like you would normally and then adjust them slightly. This actually ends up being more convenient. Now, when you do place the earbuds in your ear, you want to rotate them back a bit so that they're as flush with your ear as possible, and they should look something like this. This provides you with the best fit and comfort, whilst also in the process adjusting those hybrid foam tips to give you the best noise isolation. As for which foam tips work best for you, here's how you find out. You start by selecting any size that works for you, place them on the earbuds and place the earbuds in your ear. Then, in the app, select a high ambient sound mode and then switch to active noise cancellation. In the process of switching, you might hear some of the ambient sounds still seeping through one or both of your ears, in which case adjust the earbuds a little to see if this helps the situation. If not, try the next size of earbud. Find a tip size that gives you the maximum level of isolation while still maintaining comfort, and it'll give you the best possible experience. Now, you may need to have different sizes of earbuds in different ears. This is actually perfectly normal. Now, it is possible to use other tips on this. However, in my experience, there was a significant degradation in both sound quality as well as noise isolation and therefore active noise cancellation while I was using silicone ear tips. So I would submit to you that the best experience that you would get out of these are by using Sony's own hybrid foam tips, just as long as you have the right size. Now, unfortunately, even though the buds ended up being quite comfortable, every time I would go for a run, I would hear her thunk thunk in my head every time I took a step. Not because of the occlusion, that's not a problem here, but it's because the earbuds were still never quite as flush as I would have liked them, so they would always bump my ear just a little bit. Now, it may be that my ears are just weird, your mileage may vary. Now let's get to the smart features. Now, Sony can change your active noise cancelling or ambient sound mode based on what you're doing, whether you're sitting, walking, running, and so on. And this does work, but on average, it takes about 15 to 20 seconds for the earbuds to actually figure out that you've moved on from sitting to walking and then actually changing the sound mode. This, combined with a chime every time the sound mode changes, leads to a very disjointed experience that's a little out of sync with what you're actually doing. What you can do for this is first of all disable that chime over here in the app and set up your sound modes for different states such that they're a little more subtle when they change. For example, while you're sitting, you could use ambient mode 1, and while walking, ambient mode 10. Maybe 15 while running. This leads to a more subtle change between ambient sound modes when you're doing different things, and still gives you varying levels of noise suppression and transparency mode. A fun fact, they can also sense when you're on a vehicle of some sort, a car or a bus. It even works on a plane. Now, one of the nice things about the XM4 earbud is that whether you've got one earbud or both earbuds in, it'll still give you active noise cancellation. Which is why it's strange when, if you're trying to take a phone call, whether you have one or both earbuds in, it automatically always goes into ambient sound mode, and there's no way to change this. A pity really, because if you're taking a call on one earbud, in a noisy environment, it would have been nice to have that ANC running. And while we're talking about noise cancelling, you'll notice in the app that there's actually a feature called wind reduction. This claims to aggressively reduce wind noise at the expense of some battery charge. However, in my testing at varying levels of wind noise, it didn't really seem to make a difference. Now, one of the other smart features of the XM4 earbuds is something called Speak to Chat, and I can tell you, it works. It's meant to go into ambient sound mode whenever you start talking so that it allows you to have a conversation with someone else. The problem arises when someone else tries to begin a conversation with you, because that doesn't work like that. So you'll end up missing everything they say. Now what you can do is simply say, "I'm sorry, what was that?" And that sentence is the amount of time the earbuds take to figure out that you're speaking and to change it into ambient sound mode. Of course, you can't do this all the time, so I would suggest that if you're going to be in an environment where you expect multiple people to start conversations with you, don't use Speak to Chat. At all other times though, it does work rather well. Pro tip, you can use this menu to select a certain time delay after you've stopped talking, where the earbuds will switch back to the previous sound mode and also resume playback if you were listening to something. I find that 5 seconds works best for me. Oh, and the transition between the sound modes does again come with a chime that you can disable here. You're welcome. Now, if you prefer manual control, if someone starts talking to you and you find yourself fumbling around to tap your earbud to pause your music, then I suggest using 2 fingers instead of 1, and you'll find yourself more consistently hitting the right spot. Of course, when you're done talking, you'll have to tap it again to resume playback. What you can do instead is tap and hold your left earbud, and this activates what's called the quick attention mode, which does the same thing Speak to Chat does really. But the moment you let go, everything goes back to the way it was before. Very convenient. And finally, if you want to factory reset the device because you're selling it or you just want to reset everything, then Sony has lovingly decided to befuddle all of us by placing it at the very end of this tab here and call it initialization for some reason. Now, those were some of the quirks and features and some of the things I learned while using the XM4 earbuds, but I want to take a moment to talk about actual sound quality. Now, I have raved about it before, and like any other device, it's certainly not perfect. So let's talk about it. We'll start off with the low end, the bass. Now, I did mention that it doesn't quite have the punch that I would have preferred for certain kinds of tracks, pop, EDM and the like. That's not to say it doesn't have punch, and it seems to have a surprising amount of bass and sub-bass extension, so it's got a lot of that low-end rumble, which do often get lost in a lot of other earbuds in the market, even at this price range. Now, moving up to the mids and highs actually both sound very sweet on these earbuds. Having said that, I did find that the mids sounded a little thin and the tonality did sound just a little bit off, like this was not exactly how the voices actually are supposed to sound. Having said that, the mids are handled very beautifully, they're placed very delicately and they're resolved very well with a lot of detailed retrieval and rather good separation as well. The highs, on the other hand, while they do follow the same things, they have good separation, there's a very good amount of decay, and what that means is sounds don't linger if they shouldn't linger, and that gives you the impression of a great amount of resolution. Overall, a very nice listening experience. I will say, however, that on certain tracks where there is a lot going on, say like heavy metal for instance, they do get a little muddled and things start to become a little mushy. That is to say, it loses a bit of that separation that I was talking about just a second ago, and the higher frequencies start to seem inaccurate. One thing I will give it credit for, as I have done so before, is the sheer amount of soundstage. This somehow has an incredibly wide soundstage for something that goes in your ear, and I found the listening experience of that, combined with all that separation and delicacy with which all the frequencies are handled, to be a very, very rewarding experience. And this is where the foam tips were quite important as well. I found that the right foam tips gave me such a good level of noise isolation that it formed a really dark background on which music can be painted, if that makes sense. It's like using an OLED screen. The inkier the black, the greater the colors look, if that makes sense. Overall, I can confidently say these are the best sounding earbuds that I have heard in anything under the $300 price range. I will heartily recommend this for sound quality to anyone. I literally could not put these down for days on end because I just enjoyed listening to my music so much. There is one other thing I'd like to talk about, and that is battery charge. Now, they claim 8 hours with ANC on. Now, it is possible that they do in fact give you 8 hours on a single charge on the earbud, but my testing was a little more rigorous and I tended to keep the volume at about 60% with LDAC running and with the smart features enabled, and it gave me around 6 hours, maybe a little more than 6 hours at times. So if you want to use these earbuds as intended, then you won't get that full 8 hours. It's still a very respectable amount of time, and given that you can wirelessly charge the case meanwhile, and it also has quick charging, so 5 minutes of charge will give you at least 60 minutes of playback time, I found battery charge to be not an issue whatsoever. Overall, this has been one of the nicest experiences I've had with wireless earbuds so far. And that makes me a little sad because tomorrow I have to give these back to Sony. These are a review unit after all, but they haven't paid me to say anything. Everything I've said so far has been my genuine, unbiased experience. I will actually be sad to let these go. Actually, I do have another 18 hours before I give them back, really. Maybe I should go listen to some more music. Or maybe I should test these guys out. The Edifier Neobuds Pro. They finally came in. I've been testing them and I'll have a review out in a few days, so you might want to subscribe and stay tuned for that one. Till next time, stay happy, stay peaceful, stay colorful. Sugar boy. Hi. Have you used the Sony XM4 earbuds?